Welcome to Two Deep, Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. My name is Pete B, and I am your host. And if you're watching on YouTube, I've got someone special here with me. I've got the head brewer of Commonwealth Brewing, Jeramy Biggie, here with me. We're on location at his tap room in Fairfax. Jeremy, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Well, I shouldn't thank you for being here. This is your place. Thank you for letting me be here.
You're welcome.
But I'm excited about this. We've been talking about this for a little while. Been trying to do some more of these on-location things and letting our listeners learn a little bit about the brewing process and beer, and Jeremy's the perfect guy to have as our first guest.
Awesome. I'm excited you guys are here.
But make sure you like the video. If you enjoy Two Deep Podcast, it will help us immensely down the road. For now, I'm going to start with an introduction question for Jeremy. We've got a couple of his beautiful-looking beers here on the table. We'll start with the basics. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the brewing industry?
Sure. I'm a structural engineer originally from North Carolina, and I moved to Virginia for a job designing nuclear submarines, believe it or not. Discovered home brewing as a hobby. When I met my now wife, her mother actually bought me a Father's Day present one day. It was a homebrew kit. This is a long time ago, 15 years ago now. And I immediately fell in love with the concept and began avidly brewing all different styles. Took over my house with all the equipment and everything else. So it just kind of snowballed from there. But there was a long gestation period of learning and kind of passively just researching it. And ultimately, it culminated in me deciding with my wife to take a huge leap and start a commercial brewery. And it's done well. We're about 9 years old now, and it's off to the races.
Yeah, you founded this place in 2015, the same year that we started Two Deep. And I'll keep harping on the fact that we're the longest running Hokies podcast. But what made you go with the name Commonwealth? I know you were telling me earlier you name all of your beers, but naming the brewery, it's a big deal. Were there some names that got left on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, so naming the brewery was like one of the most stressful things I had done up to that point. I spent months and months thinking about it, believe it or not. Went through probably 100 different types of names. Commonwealth came to me at the 11th hour, believe it or not. And when it did, I knew immediately that it was the name I wanted. And I began to research it immediately. And I found that it was available, which was unbelievable that it was available. So there's a funny story of my wife was going to bed, 10:30 at night. And I was in one of my manic phases trying to name the beer. And so I started researching. I wasn't getting anywhere. I had several drinks, had several more. Still not getting anywhere, just kind of panicking. How am I going to start this thing? I need a name. And and it finally came to me, Commonwealth. I loved it because I wanted the brewery to be fresh and have a foot forward in the younger audience. But I also knew Virginia, and I wanted to have that classic name that really spoke to who we are as a state. And I thought, what better combination than to do that? So I came up with the names at some point, like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I, of course, immediately began to worry that I wouldn't be able to trademark the name. So I went to the USPTO site. I watched videos on how to trademark, and I trademarked it. And then I came to my wife at 5 in the morning, got into bed, and said, I'm going to go to work late tomorrow, babe.
But when you started this and wanted to make a beer that you thought could be better than the next guys, what was your approach? What did you want to focus on? And what's your approach now in terms of how you come up with the beers that you make? Is there something that you always stick by?
So I think the origin story is the passion centered around Belgian sour beer, fruited sours in particular. I encountered those, fairly late in my home brewing effort, and I was blown away by how delicious it was. And I was romanced by the kind of vintner influence with the long barrel aging, that kind of thing. Slow aging a beer for a year or more, and then bottle conditioning it, and then finally getting to sample it maybe a year, maybe 2 years after you've brewed it. and trying to, remember or look back at your notes about what you actually did. I just fell in love with that part. So that was the start. From there, it was like, jumping on a roller coaster and taking off. The hazy beer scene took off, and lagers have always been something I've loved as well. So it's hard to answer that question. I've had influences from everything. My travels, the food I've had, beers I've had, over the course of my life. And I really try to pull from everything. And I think my guiding focus is to create the best experience I possibly can. And I trust my own palate, and I trust the palate of my team, in particular, my new head brewer, who's employee number 2 and has worked with me from the beginning, George Bauman. He's got a palate that's similar to mine, and we can riff off of each other's really well. And it's made, we've been able to make some really amazing styles. We've made every style I can honestly think of, we've done. And the goal is just to make it as good a beer as it possibly can be. And if we do the work and we taste it and it's not up to standard, or it just doesn't quite express like we want, we try it again.
See, I like the way you said that, because sometimes when you drink a beer that you just pick up from the store or whatever, you think, oh, they didn't work very hard on this one. Or that's not what's happening here. You're putting a lot of thought and love into each and every beer.
Absolutely.
And that's appreciated. Now, and maybe this kind of cancels that question out, but when you're thinking of a new beer to make, does it ever depend on the ingredients you have available? Or do you like, oh no, I want to make this beer, I'll go to Germany and get those hops and whatever? Like, how does that work? Like,
well, fortunately, most things are available to us these days. I mean, obviously during COVID, everyone was restricted, but before and after COVID, things have opened up. You can get access to anything if you really want it and you really need it. So I think from an inspiration perspective, like I'm inspired by, a street drink that I had in Korea, or, I've had a cocktail at a really nice bar and restaurant. And so I try to make that and make it the best I possibly can. So it's always that inspiration.
That's interesting. And you do have a very eclectic tap list, and that's one thing that differentiates Commonwealth.
Sure.
How do you go about building out that tap list? Like is it regimented? Like, oh, IPAs are in right now, we've got to have 10 IPAs, we've got to have 5 stouts. Like, how do you go about building it out?
Yeah. I think a lot of breweries are very regimented and plan months and months out. I do not. I'm about 30 to 45 days, at most 60 out at any one point. And the reason for that is I like to be spontaneous. I like to respond to what's going on in the world. I like to react to new flavors that I'm tasting, on my own adventures. And I want to be as creative as possible and as diverse as possible. So I don't take that approach, to the great frustration of many distributors that work with us. But I think I think it creates the best experience for our customers.
Yeah. Do you brew any beers year round?
We do. We have a set of flagship IPAs and stouts and a saison
Flagship
and lagers that we do year round. It's probably around 6 or 8 at this point. So we definitely do. Wapatuli IPA is it was a homebrew recipe I used to make, and we translated it to the beer. It's since changed even more, but it's like a standard bearer for us. There's also Big Poppy. We have the Wealth Saison. Marvalo is an oatmeal stout that's super chocolatey and rich. We love. And then Oriole, our lager.
Is that what you're drinking right now? What are you having right now?
I'm actually having our Easy Lager right now. It's just
Easy Lager. Okay. I am drinking the Crisper Boy. And when I turned to Jeremy, I was like, oh, it's a Crispy Boy, like a light beer. He's like, no, it's a single IPA. And if you guys listen to the podcast, I'm a big fan of my 6 to 7.5% IPAs. I like doubles, but as I get more advanced in age, I tend to like singles that have a lot of good flavor. And
Same.
I feel like this Crisper is doing it. What Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Sure. CRISPR Boy is a pretty funny name concept that we came up with. Everyone's familiar with CRISPR, the gene editing tool. There was a yeast strain that had been genetically modified to create better esters and more of a fruit forward flavor and aroma. And we were experimenting with it, and that's one of the few that I haven't named. Gio, my buddy, actually came up with a joke. We should name it CRISPR Boy, BOI. And I started laughing out loud, and I was like, "That's definitely going to be the name of this beer." And
you talked about core beers. What's your favorite style of beer to brew? Like, if you were like, I know I can make this beer absolutely outstanding, what's that style?
I think in the beginning it would have been it would have been a true Belgian sour that was long-term aged and fruited. This is in the Belgian tradition.
What would give us an example of?
Well, like taking an Ode Brune, for example. So like a high gravity brown ale or something like that, and putting it in, brewing it, and we tend to do a base stainless ferment, and then we push it into barrels that have been used for various wines, white or red, and we add souring bacteria and yeast and let it age for an extended period. If it's a lighter colored beer, it'd be like 6 months. If it's a darker colored beer, we tend to go for a year to 18 months. And then from there, we sample the beers out of the barrels, pull nails, taste it, create a blend that we like, and then put that back in the tank, add fruit, and let that re-ferment. Then when that's done, we're bottling it and on priming sugar so that it can bottle condition. And so all told, that process becomes, easily 2 years. And it's just a beautiful thing when you finally get to chill that down.
You love that process
and drink it.
That's like what drives you.
It's the most romantic thing in the industry for me. So.
And you were telling me, and I think I had been promoting this as I'm going to have the head brewer on. Jeremy kind of pulled the rug out. He said he just promoted a guy, which you did reference. But you were talking about how you have to baby those casks when you're the head brewer. It's 8 hours. You can't go away from the situation.
So any brewer knows this, that when you start your brew day, you're tied to that machine. You're working for the full day, 8, 9, 10 hours, depending on what it is, and it could go even longer if it's a double mash or you're doing a long boil down. So it can be intense, and it makes for long days on your feet. For me, having a team that I trust, that understands my palate and really responds well to instruction and to feedback, it's been amazing. It's allowing us to expand. I'm stoked for my team.
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback on that question I asked you about styles of beer. Since 2015, we're talking about the 9 years. Is there a favorite beer that you've brewed, and is it on tap right now, or is it something that you did years back?
So that's a really hard question, but
it's like asking your favorite child, right? Like that's tough.
The one I'll give you today is Grodziskie that we did.
What's it called?
Grodziskie. It's a Polish smoke lager.
Okay.
And it's an amazing beer because it's really low ABV.
Okay.
It's made with 100% smoked wheat malt. We named it Puff for that reason. And it's just like this really simple beer. And when you hear smoked wheat malt in a lager, you don't think that's going to be delicious.
Yeah,
but it actually is so delicious, and it adds a complexity to any food you're having in the summertime. It's almost my favorite beach beer, believe it or not. And people are gonna roll their eyes when they hear that. But
what's the color like when it comes out?
Very, very clear, very pale yellow.
Okay.
And very effervescent, huge head retention because wheat has so many of those dextrins that can really help create that. So you're just getting a super refreshing low ABV, so you can have many of them if you want. And it really accentuates the food.
It's one of the nice things about Commonwealth is that they have so many more things than just a long list of IPAs. But what trends do you see emerging right now? I know a couple years ago, black IPAs were coming in, maybe like the German Pilsners and some of that kind of stuff was coming back, making a resurgence. What trends are you seeing right now in the beer industry?
I mean, I think everyone's seeing that lagers are coming back into play. They never left, honestly, but they're coming more to the forefront as people are looking for things that are more drinkable, that are more sessionable, and people have a greater degree of health consciousness, I think, today than they did maybe a few years ago. So that's not to diminish the double IPA or anything like that, because those are still, the best sellers. But German lagers, Czech lagers, those are some of the real interesting.
I love those beers. And honestly, any real beer lover, we got started drinking light beer and in college or whatever else. And sometimes it's nice to be able to have more than 2, more than 3. And that's hard with the double IPA. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate the fact that the lagers are making a comeback.
Yeah, I do too. And that's why I like Puff so much, is because you've got a low ABV package that has so much flavor.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful expression and shows a real brewing skill when you can do that.
Yes. How do you guys, is there a research arm of Commonwealth, or is that you?
You're looking at it.
Okay. So, how do you stay ahead of that curve? Are you researching breweries overseas, across the country? Is it just what comes to your mind? How do you?
We get invited to a lot of festivals, both around the country and internationally. And fortunately, we're able to attend a lot of them. So you do just naturally get a sense of what's going on in the industry as you walk around and try things during the fest. And it's also just amazing to meet customers internationally. We were in a festival in Poland recently. It was not a place I would have expected to go, but it was a fantastic time.
So cool. And I do want to ask you about collaboration later. That would probably be in the U.S., but go on.
Sure. Just found some delicious beers there and some amazing breweries, and we're following that up with a trip this spring to Europe for 2 weeks, and are going to fit in about 7 different collabs all over Europe. So really excited for that.
Where do you see brewing heading in the next couple of years? Is it still IPA dominant, or is there something new coming? A consolidation, perhaps, because we know anyone in any small town across America probably has a brewery right now. I think I saw, maybe it was a year or 2 ago now, that we have the most breweries in the U.S. that we've had since Abraham Lincoln was president or something. Yeah. So how do you see it going forward? Is it going to be harder for upstarts to compete, or do you think there's more room for everyone? Or and in terms of the beer, like I said, IPA dominant still?
Well, there's more. So there's more breweries now than Prohibition. Prohibition was the last time America had so many, and now I think we're easily 1,000 plus over that. Don't quote me. It's kind of insane, and they're opening all the time. I would say that there is room for more breweries, in the sense that if they're controlling their expectations, as a craft brewery, if you're trying to create a great experience and a great environment for your local community, and by local I mean like a 5-mile radius,
right?
Then you can do that, and you're going to be able to do that, this year, next year, then 10 years from now. But if you're trying to be, a grocery store shelf, massive distributed brewery, that regional, national, that kind of thing, you're going to find it extremely challenging. There's just a massive amount of competition. There's a lot of entrenched players in the distribution market. And so I would recommend, and I think the public would rather, that anyone starting a new brewery focus on creating the experience in their local space, and they'll succeed.
That's the thing I love about breweries in general. And like our town in Jersey has a small brewery, but it creates a real sense of community. And that's probably
Huge.
A big reason you wanted to start it in the first place.
It is. It was one of the major reasons. I mean, aside from, I love being able to create something and then see people enjoy it. Like, I think throughout my career, that's been my guiding passion. But when I met my wife, she was studying in Germany. And I met her she was taking a quick vacation to Virginia Beach to visit family. And I met her there, and we kind of fell in love. And then she went back to Germany, like literally 2 months later, and went back to school. And so that Christmas, I came to visit her, and she took me to all the beer gardens, and I got to see, the European beer hall culture and watch families and old people, young people all gathering around and drinking just really delicious lager mostly, and great food, and just having the best time of their life. And I was blown away, and it affected me immensely. And it literally was the catalyst for what you see today. And so the big communal tables that you see in both our locations in Virginia Beach and Fairfax, that's the inspiration, and that's what we're trying to kind of get a little bit of here.
And it's a perfect style for a beer hall like you have here in Fairfax. This FFX location is the new location,
yes,
correct? And it's awesome. The aesthetic, you guys can see it on the camera. It's phenomenal. And I did also like the fact that you named your brewery Commonwealth, but you're a North Carolina guy. This is an NC State grad we've got here, but he loves the Commonwealth so much, just like the rest of us Hokie fans, that he named his brewery after it, and I appreciate that. So let's go to the collaboration question I wanted to ask you. So many breweries do this. How important is it collaborating? Is it something that you value, or is it something you think, we don't really need to do that here at Commonwealth?
I think you can exist doing it or not doing it, but I find it to be incredibly enriching, both personally and professionally, to do it. One, I think breweries contain some of the coolest people on the planet. They're just really fun. They're very diverse. There's so many interesting people, especially internationally. It's insane. And so to get to go into their spaces and see how they operate and meet their teams and taste their products, and they're just as passionate as we are. I love that. And so I will always do that. And I think it's something we focused on from the beginning, was a desire to do that. And so we've done collaborations, across the country, and we've done quite a number of them overseas as well. And as I alluded to earlier, we're gonna have a big season of it this year too. And I'm really excited to travel.
Speaking of collaborations, you've got some Hokies here, myself included. Hardywood has done a Fighting Hokies lager in association with the school. I'm not saying you'd have to use that name. We talked about the USPTO earlier.
Sure.
Would you ever brew a VT-inspired beer in hopes of selling, like you put some orange and maroon on a can, you might sell a lot of beer?
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, we've considered that. I'm still working on the idea though.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be a real winner.
And I can help you with that because you said flagship beers earlier.
Yeah.
Flagship is what our coach Brent Pry has called our program, the flagship of the state, kind of sticking it to UVA and JMU and all the rest.
Nice.
I think a flagship lager or a flagship Friday IPA would be something that we could get behind. But if nothing else, maybe some game watches or something like that where
for sure
Commonwealth is involved. We could be here hanging out. I think that would be fun. But
I think it'd be great. We actually just installed a laser projector with a 130-inch screen just for that kind of thing. So we'd welcome that.
We like to hear that. I asked you about starting up in the business. If you had to give advice to someone getting into the brewing industry, what would it be? And would it be don't?
It would be be patient.
Okay.
And it would be have a thick skin. Have a real thick skin. You're going to run into an awful lot.
Because I would imagine
headwinds.
It's very hard to brew a very good beer. And you probably didn't get it right your first time.
That is just the first hurdle. That's literally the very first one. I mean, don't get in the business if you haven't figured that out. Please don't. Too many people have. But it's just there's so many things that come at you as a small business owner, trying to finance, find good people, find the space, afford everything. It's a lot. And so I would encourage someone, if they're really considering it, to absolutely not take it lightly, to do their homework in detail. You can never go into enough detail. And, I wish them the best.
Well, Jeramy, I can't thank you enough for being here. This has been a pleasure. And
thank you.
I know I'm going to be back here soon. I don't live in the D.C. area, but I'm here to see some friends. And, coming to Commonwealth has convinced me I need to come back more often. This is, seriously, the beer is phenomenal. Love the new setup. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. See you guys.